And welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Phil Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today for Suki Neon, we're reviewing the first episode of Gravity Falls Tourist Trapped. Now, sometimes I actually make notes and notebooks for notes when I'm watching stuff or I'm about to do a review. So I've got a lot of notes over here. Most of the other notes are on my computer, which this one is going to be long. This first episode, these notes are long. Next ones won't be so bad. Yeah, that way we'll be able to actually get through this, you and I. Anywho, Gravity Falls, created by Alex Hirsch, and originally, if I remember correctly, the pilot was pitched to Cartoon Network, similar to how the pilot for Adventure Time was pitched to Nickelodeon, and then Cartoon Network picked it up. This one was pitched to Cartoon Network, and then Disney XD picked it up. I know, weird, huh? In like 2012. They was like 2011, 2012 was when they picked up. I think 2012 was when this debuted. About 4 years later, they're almost to the last episode. Since I don't know how this show ends, some of my opinion of some of these earlier episodes might actually be tainted later on after, well, whenever this ends. But we're going to try and get these out before the end. Before the weird apocalypse. Anywho, okay, let's start up on the beginning, really. I want to say that I'm really, really happy that, well, they start out with voiceover. Dipper's got a little bit of voiceover. And thankfully, they don't do that anymore in this series because, it's not a really good narrative tool. Anywho, I do have to say that I love the opening theme for this, and when you the first shot of the show is actually of well, it's not of Dipper and Mabel, but it's more like Proto Dipper and Proto Mabel, being like these, another family. They're used in another joke in I think the second episode and a couple of the other episodes, but then they disappear forever. Anywho, a few notes. It starts out where basic plot is that, Dipper and Mabel's parents decide they need more sun or something and send them to go live with their great uncle Stan out in Gravity Falls, Oregon. Few notes. When they first show Mabel and Dipper, Mabel owns a cat. We never hear anything more about this cat. And then later on in the series, she gets a pig. And I don't know if she's going to be able to keep that pig with that cat, or if that doesn't even have to do anything, or if it was weirdly retconned out. Who knows? But yeah, you first see her with a cat, and then they never mention it again. Dipper actually has what looks like a retro duo. So see, this is video game related. And that gets, taken away, and their parents send them off. I have to say that, though, the only real reason for parents to send their kids away for the summer is if they're going either through a divorce, a trial separation, or if they just need some good old-fashioned orgy time. Everyone needs a little bit of orgy time. Come on, bring your friends. Come to a place that, let's get away off of that. Anyways, they also show a little map where Gravity Falls technically is. It's in the Tri-County area, or rather, it looks like it's based in the Tri-County area of Central Oregon between Crook, Jefferson, and Deschutes County. So it's a tri-county area, similar to like Phineas and Ferb or something. It really, really looks like it's Prinesville, or kind of a cross between Prinesville, Oregon, and Lone Pine, Oregon. Which, when you think about it, is actually pretty funny. A couple things that they mention, like starting out, they show off Grunkle Stan, who is kind of like he's kind of a really like a Jewish Italian stereotype or something. I'm not really sure. He's a really weird stereotype. And when you first see Dipper in this, he also has like a little star hat. There's pretty much, he's just not adjusting to life working at his parents' store. It's similar to like I think like the fourth book of Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events, where the little Baudelaire children are sent off to work at the Miserable Mill, which was like a logging thing for a little while. Yeah, pretty much Mabel and Dipper get sent out to live with their Grunkle Stan, who puts them to work at his mystery shack, which is a tourist trap, hence the name. And the entirety of this series revolves around their adventures during this. Now, Alex Hirsch says that this is kind of based off of his own childhood, which he may be fudging the details a little bit. This actually reminds me a little bit of like Erie, Indiana, or Goosebumps. In fact, the structure for all these episodes is very similar to Goosebumps. In a Goosebumps book, it's usually the main characters are away from their normal home, or they've just moved into a new home, or they're on vacation. And then there's some kind of paranormal doohickey or thing that happens, and then at the end of the book, at the end of the little Goosebumps book, nobody learns anything, which is kind of characteristic of Goosebumps books in particular. And that kind of happens here and there in Gravity Falls. Okay, there's also a lot of little things that they put in here. Like, for example, before Dipper gets sent out and he finds the journal, you'll note that one of the cash registers says 618 on it. And when he finds the journal in a hollow metal tree, the first entry is June 18th, so 618. There's a lot of that in this particular series. There's a lot of little cryptography. There's all these little... There's stuff in the background. There's lots of references to kind of the big bad of the series. There's references to the little twists and turns in it. And that works pretty well, because a lot of people watch this, and we have an internet culture that likes to look at every frame of something, looking for secrets. We all love conspiracies, and that's kind of infectious because Dipper really goes into conspiracies. One thing I have to note, that had Dipper shown the journal to Grunkle Stan when he first finds it, I think this entire series would have gone completely different than it actually does. Kind of interesting thing to note. Well, anyways, he starts reading through that journal, and then his sister, well, the little B-plot is that Mabel is all about boys. She's 12, and she's at that part of her life, like before you hit puberty, where she's kind of into like the Tiger Beat magazines, that type of stuff. So she's like kind of a little boy crazy, which is actually pretty funny. When he's looking through the journal, there's a little bit there where you see stuff about cursed doors, knock knock, who's there, the forces of evil. You hear about gnomes and zombies, and you see the zodiac wheel, which may be important in this for some other reasons. And then stuff. Anyways, after Dipper goes and finds his journal, he comes back and Mabel announces that she's found a boyfriend. And his name is Normal Man, or Norman, and Dipper thinks he might be a zombie. So he starts following around his sister to find out if Norman is a zombie. Oh, one thing to note about a lot of the early episodes of Gravity Falls is they have a thing where a character will say something, then you have a flashback to it. Similar to the humor that you find in shows like Dan Versus or Family Guy or whatnot, where they did flashback humor. And there's a part there where Mabel admits that, like, she was doing kissing practice with a leaf blower. And that's pretty funny. It's pretty gifable. A lot of this show, like My Little Pony or Steven Universe or Adventure Time, feels like it was made so that people could take frames of it and make GIFs and use them for reactions or whatnot on the internet. A lot of how we consume culture nowadays is heavily dependent on internet culture, on that social media and such, and there's a lot of that in Gravity Falls, especially early on. Then as the story becomes much more complex, especially near the end of this first season, there's a little bit less of that, and there's a lot less flashback humor, or quote skit style humor. Pretty much a couple things about this particular thing. I thought in this episode Mabel was a little bit mean to Dipper when he confronts her, saying, that your boyfriend might be a zombie, saying Norman might not be what he thinks. what she thinks he is. And that's kind of a trend through most of the first season. Mabel's the sweet character, but she's actually very mean to Dipper throughout this series. To the point where, like, I don't really think Mabel's a likable character for the first couple episodes of this series because of how she treats Dipper when he's mostly trying to, before he starts his whole neurotic stuff with Wendy, he's more or less the straight man here is the character that's looking out for everybody's best interests. Anyways, turns out that he finds some proof that Norman is not what he seems, but Mabel has gone off into the woods on a date with Norman, and then in kind of a Twilight-esque scene, in fact it's actually, the setting is kind of ripped from like the movies, not the books for Twilight, Norman reveals to Mabel that he is in fact several gnomes standing on top of each other. He's gnomes. They want her to be their queen, all like 900 of them. So Mabel obviously says no. And then they're like, well, we'll never forget you because we're going to kidnap you. And then they try, but then Dipper rescues them, and that goes back to the first part of this during the cold open where they're shown being chased by something. It's essentially a bunch of gnomes standing on top of each other to make one giant gnome, which is pretty amusing actually. A lot of the humor in here works. It's a fun little series, and the chase sequence is really well animated. It works. And then eventually they find a way to defeat the gnomes with the leaf blowers from that. And well, let's see, a couple things. We find after they do that, they kind of make up. And Mabel apologizes for not trusting Dipper on his suspicions. And they do a little awkward sibling hug, and complete with pats. Which, that's actually important in later episodes of this. Then after that, since Grunkle Stan's had a pretty good day, he lets them pick out 2 items from the gift store. Dipper decides to replace the little star hat he had, which he lost to some gnomes, with his little pine tree hat. And Mabel goes with the grappling hook, which comes in handy in later episodes. And that's pretty much the first episode of Gravity Falls. There's some pretty good jokes in it. Like one of the better jokes in there is a part there where, I think Dipper punches one of the gnomes away, and it leans over a tree and starts puking out rainbows, which is actually pretty hilarious. There's a couple things like when they flash back to some of Mabel's more earlier attempts, more amorous attempts to get a boyfriend. She's like, one of the things, this guy is like sitting, she sends him a note and it's like, do you like me? Yes, absolutely, definitely. She's like, I read it. Or there's a part here where this guy's sitting on a bench, he's holding a turtle. She goes, you like turtles? I like turtles. What is happening? Oh, by the way, Kristen Schaal from Bob's Burgers and Last Man on Earth and several other shows, like Adventure Time, for example, is Mabel in this series, and she does an excellent job in it. Her character would probably be less likable if Kristen Schaal weren't the voice of her character. Because she's got this charm, I guess, to her voice where it's almost annoying but not really, so it's kind of endearing. And it works. Overall, this show is really well animated by Rough Draft, which is a company out of Korea. And it works. It looks good. Looking forward to diving into some more episodes of this series. I'm not going to have all these notes for all of these, so those episodes will definitely be shorter. But I'm looking forward to pretty much hey, if you're rewatching this episode before the finale, go ahead and do that. And then come back and comment in the comments below what you thought of it. Let's get a dialogue going, a conversation, if you will. And hey, if you like this video, hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.